Well, good morning, everyone. It's time for inspiration for today again. And you are here. I'm glad you are. It wouldn't be the same without you. Well, we're in Revelation chapter 10 today in our study through the book of Revelation. Did you read it in advance? I suggested yesterday that you start doing that. And because until we come back, we, the church, we, the believers, come back on the scene, all that we're reading in Revelation takes place in the second half of the Great Tribulation, and we totally believe that we will not be a part of that. It's very interesting information, though, and we come back on the scene when Jesus comes back and sets up his 1,000-year kingdom in Revelation chapter 19. So, today we come to Revelation 10. You know, we've just finished reading about the 6 trumpet judgments, which were a part of the 7th seal. I hope you've been with it. It sounds a little confusing, but just know that we have just seen amazingly terrible judgments upon the earth. And so this is kind of a pause in that, because we're not coming to the 7th trumpet till halfway through the next chapter, actually. But in chapter 10, the Apostle John has a surprising visitor. Let's read about that. Verse 1. Then I saw another mighty angel coming down from heaven. And I'm just telling you, this is going to be a beautiful angel. He was robed in a cloud with a rainbow above his head. His face was like the sun. His legs were like fiery pillars. He was holding a little scroll, which lay open in his hand. And then it goes on to describe him in more detail. He is an amazingly beautiful angel. But he has this scroll. And of course, Jesus, all that we're reading through all of this is found in the scroll that Jesus was holding at the time of the great worship of chapters 4 and 5. And he was the only one worthy of reading what was in that scroll. And he is. He's telling us these things. But in this case, there's kind of a pause because another angel appears to the Apostle John. Verse 5, let's start to read about that. Then the angel I had seen standing on the sea and on the land raised his right hand to heaven. And he swore, this is an interesting passage, and he swore by him who lives forever and ever, who created the heavens and all that is in them, the earth and all that's in it, and the sea and all that's in it, and said, well, let's just stop there. Who is he talking about? Who is the one who created everything? Jesus. So he says, by Jesus, I just tell you, these things are true. He says, though, there will be no more delay. In the days when the 7th angel is about to sound his trumpet, because we haven't come to the 7th trumpet yet, the mystery of God will be accomplished, just as he announced to his servants, the prophets. Now, what did the prophets talk about? The prophets actually talked about Jesus 2 times. They talk, and that it was a little confusing to people prior to the Messiah coming, because the Old Testament prophets talk about him coming as a lamb, as a peaceful thing, bringing grace and forgiveness and salvation. But there's also a lot of prophecies in the Old Testament about the mighty warrior coming. We now know he's called the Lion of Judah. And those times, it was all talking about the same person, but it was talking about when Jesus comes back to rule and to bring justice to the world. And so for us, that's a great promise. For others, it is not. But God will accomplish, just as he announced to the Old Testament prophets. Then the voice that I had heard from heaven spoke to me, and once more, go, take the scroll that lies open in the hand of the angel that's standing in the sea. So I went to the angel and asked him to give me the little scroll. And he said, take it and eat it. Take it and eat it. In other words, make it a part of your life. Yes, I will give it to you. And it's symbolic. It's of the Word of God. The Word of God. And the reaction that John has is certainly worth noting, because it's true of the Word of God today, actually, depending on how you take it. The end of verse 9, continuing on in verse 9, he says, he said to me, take it and eat it. It will turn your stomach sour, but in your mouth it will be as sweet as honey. So I took the little scroll from the angel's hand and ate it. It did taste as sweet as honey in my mouth. But when I had eaten it, my stomach turned sour. And then I was told, you must prophesy again about many peoples, nations, languages, and kings. So what does all that mean? That it that it tasted as sweet as honey in my mouth. Well, the Word of God for those who are followers of Christ, believers, it's sweet. It's sweet. Don't you love the Word of God? If you're a follower of Christ, then you love the Word of God. You know why? Because it speaks of the grace of God. It speaks of the love of God. It speaks, well, actually, in this book, we're reading about the justice of God. It speaks of many, many promises to you and I that we just cherish. And when we actually did a series on the promises of God, and you all voted on what were your favorite ones. And I love those promises. That was such a blessing to me. We might try that again when we finish this study, because that was one of my favorites. It just pointed out wonderful promises of God that are in the Bible for his children, his followers. It's sweet. But for those who are not followers of Christ yet, and I pray that if anyone watching is in that category, that it's coming. I hope it is. It'll be a blessing to you. But the Word of God is sour. It's sour in his stomach because it was sour for unbelievers. Why you say that? Well, look at all the judgments. That alone, that the judgments that we're reading and unveiling are terrible. We haven't finished reading them all yet either. We've read enough. We figured out last time that about half the world's population by this time has already died. Half. But we're still going on. There's still lots of people. Well, those judgments that the Bible talks about, they are not good news. And this chapter refers to them as sour. And John, it's a sadness. John did not like to have to tell these things that will be coming and that will be happening. He did it because God had asked him to write these things down. And remember in chapter 1, Jesus said, blessed are those who hear and do these things. And basically for the believers who believe these things. Not so for the unbelievers. Well, that's about it for today. Tomorrow we're going to be in chapter 11. I hope you'll read that in advance because there's some really interesting things again. Until then, see you tomorrow. Beautiful day. It's wonderful. This is the day that the